Welcome to Crown World TV Report, your source for the stories others won't tell. I'm bringing you today's controversial investigation about a family secret that was hidden for decades. The story you're about to hear was never meant to be heard this way. It isn't gentle. It isn't neat, and it certainly isn't comfortable. This is the kind of story families bury, institutions silence, and history quietly edits out. Not because it isn't true, but because saying it out loud changes everything that comes after. At the center of it is Meghan, and standing just behind her in the shadows is her mother, Doria. For years, the world has watched Meghan Markle through carefully framed moments, red carpets, royal balconies, interviews polished to perfection. But this story doesn't live in front of cameras. It lives in missing names, in empty spaces, in details that were never explained. Because explaining them would open a door that could never be closed again. What you're about to hear isn't rumor. It isn't gossip passed around online. It's a story hidden inside records, silence, and one decision that forced a woman to sit alone while the world watched and pretended not to notice. And if this story is true, even partially, then it explains tears that were never seen, distance that was never explained, and a family secret so heavy it reshaped an entire royal narrative. Once you hear it, you won't look at that wedding, that family, or that silence the same way again. Because some secrets don't just change reputations, they change bloodlines. In May of 2018, the world watched what looked like a modern fairy tale, a royal wedding at Windsor Castle. A bright white gown, a long veil, a woman stepping into history while millions watched from their living rooms, phones, and office screens. It was presented as a moment of joy, unity, and progress. A new chapter for the monarchy. But something about that picture didn't sit right. Look past the dress, past the cameras, past the polished smiles. Look at the seats. On one side the British royal family, row after row, generations deep. On the other side, there was just one person, Meghan's mother, Doria, sitting completely alone. No sisters, no brothers, no cousins, no aunts, no uncles. Just one woman placed in full view of the world, directly across from the Queen herself. That wasn't an accident. Weddings are about family, even small ones, especially historic ones. And yet, at the biggest wedding of Meghan's life, her entire extended family was missing. Not late, not stuck in traffic, not quietly seated out of frame, missing. The image was strange enough that people noticed it instantly, even if they didn't understand why it felt uncomfortable. One woman against an institution that measures its history in centuries. One empty side of the church where laughter, whispers, and shared glances should have been. The palace knew how it looked. Everyone did. And yet, they chose that image anyway, which raises the first uncomfortable thought. If this was supposed to be a celebration of unity, why did it look like isolation instead? That single decision to let Doria sit alone is where this story truly begins. When something doesn't add up, the mind naturally starts asking questions. Not wild ones, simple ones. And in this story, there are 4 questions that hover over everything. Whether anyone wants to say them out loud or not. Did the royal family know? Did Meghan's father know? Did Meghan herself know? And perhaps the hardest question of all, did Doria know? These questions aren't dramatic. They're logical. Because secrets don't exist in a vacuum. They exist inside people, inside decisions, inside silence. By the time the engagement was announced, Meghan's life was no longer private. Every detail was being examined, catalogued, and prepared for public consumption. That's how royal life works. Backgrounds are checked. Histories are traced. Family trees are mapped out and published for the world to see. Nothing is casual at that level. Which means if something unusual existed in Meghan's family history, it wouldn't have gone unnoticed. It would have been seen, discussed, evaluated, and handled. Handled how? That's where the silence begins to speak. Because instead of openness, what followed was distance. Instead of inclusion, there was careful separation. Instead of explanation, there was a quiet agreement to say nothing and hope no one looked too closely. But someone did look. And what they found wasn't loud. It wasn't scandalous on the surface. It was something far more unsettling, a blank space. Royal Daily Report uncovers what was meant to stay hidden. When Meghan and Harry's engagement was announced, British newspapers did what they always do. They published her genealogy, a full family tree neatly laid out generation by generation. Names, dates, places, a visual history meant to reassure the public that everything was in order. But buried inside those charts was something that shouldn't have been there. Or rather, something that wasn't. Where Doria's mother's name should have been, there was nothing, just a blank space. No explanation, no footnote, no correction later issued. At first glance, it might seem like a simple error. Records get messy. Names get lost. But this wasn't a single document. Across multiple records, the same omission appeared again and again. Always the same missing piece. A mother without a mother. That's not a small detail. That's one of the most basic facts in any family tree. And when something that basic is missing repeatedly, it stops looking like a mistake and starts looking like a decision. People tried to make sense of it quietly. Maybe there had been an adoption. Maybe the information was incomplete. Maybe the records just hadn't caught up yet. But time passed and nothing was filled in. The blank remained, and that blank did something powerful. It invited a question no one wanted to answer. What would happen if that name was written down? Because whatever it was, someone had decided it was safer to leave an empty space than to tell the full story. And that empty space would not stay empty forever. For 8 long months after the wedding, that blank space stayed exactly where it was. No correction, no clarification, no quiet updates slipped into the records. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report. And then slowly, without announcement or explanation, a name appeared. Janet Arnold. Just like that, the empty space that had raised so many questions was suddenly filled. Janet Arnold, born in 1929 in Sandusky, Ohio, died in the year 2000. A full lifespan, a real person, a real name. And once there was a name, everything changed because names unlock doors. They lead to birth certificates, death certificates, burial records, census listings, church documents. The kind of records that don't tell stories with emotion, but with dates, places, and undeniable connections. Before Janet Arnold, there was nothing to trace. After Janet Arnold, there was no place left to hide, and the timing mattered. This wasn't discovered years later by chance. This name surfaced after the wedding, after the vows were said, after the world had already accepted the fairy tale, which raises a quiet but unsettling thought. If this information existed all along, why did it only become visible once it was too late to turn back? That single question pushed the story forward because now the trail was open, and the deeper it went, the stranger it became.